Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Good evening. I would like to open the Monday, August 28th, 2023 meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is now 6:30 p.m. And would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of requests. I would ask that everyone please silence your cell phones and notify me as the chair if you are making a video or audio recording of this open meeting session. The placement and operation of your recording equipment cannot interfere with the conduct of the meeting. And I just have one person. Is that correct? Okay, great. Thank you. We will move into recognitions. Any recognitions from the board?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to recognize that I saw in the obituaries the passing of three of our Falmouth residents I believe need mentioning. Doug White, the former principal at Lawrence School. He was an Army veteran, math teacher, and administrator, and really well loved by the community. I don't recall the last time I saw so many things on social media about his passing and how much he had impacted their lives. So mention of Doug White and Arthur Raposa, also an Army veteran, and he was an attorney and a former planning board member in Falmouth, and he led quite a life as well and was very involved in the community. And then also Arthur Calfee, he was a troop leader for Eagle Scout 40. He was an Eagle Scout, and his son Davidson became an Eagle Scout with his leadership. He must have helped a lot of young men in his time because he organized so many different Scout activities and the breakfast that they had every annual celebration. He was the initiator of that. So quite a life. And if you recall, Arthur was the design review committee chairman for almost as long as I can remember. And he would approve all the signs around town until, finally he became ill and couldn't carry on with it. So, but thanks to all those gentlemen for all they've done for the town. So just wanted to mention that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Brown. Doug White was very good to me going through the schools. He was someone who said to me that I needed to move on to administration and sort of convinced me to go that path. And I know that he did that for many people in the district. So that was, he was very good to many people in education, and he'll really be missed. I would like to also add the passing of Adam Walcholder. We all know that Adam had been missing since June 16th. He lived here in town for 10 years. He was a real addition to our community. He worked at the Stop and Shop and was always happy. It was always good to see him. And I just thought that it would be good to call him out as well in honor of his friends and family.
Good.
Go ahead,
It's okay,
please.
I have one more. I was noticing in the budget review that in our sources of revenue this year, we have listed as $7 million plus of revenue from grants. I don't know if that's like already secured or anticipated, but we often mention how we can always do more in grant funding, but $7 million is pretty impressive, so hats off to the staff, whichever organization, which department is securing all these grants, but that's certainly helpful and I appreciate it.
Agreed. Anything else under recognition? Announcements? Any announcements from the board to the public?
I don't have any.
Okay. Anyone here for public comment? Okay, public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself, and since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board will not participate in any discussion of your topic. So, public comment. Okay, I saw Mr. Finneran first. You want me to start over here? Okay, great. I'll take in the back with the black shirt.
Good evening, Joanne Treisman, 1 Triumph Street. So I live here, read the newspaper, I kind of know what's going on, and I worry about things that happen in town until something sort of hits you in the face. I have a friend who's got a 16-year-old. The house she lived in the winter just got sold, so she has to stay in the basement where she's been all summer while she looks for other housing. And I know we have a lot of young people here today who are really concerned about getting rentals, getting a place to live, to be here, to work here. We send our kids to school, we give them good educations, we say go out into the world, but if they want to move back here, they have to face, how am I going to live there? I can't afford to live there. So I just wanted to speak just kind of briefly about how we can find information. I was trying to help my friend. I go on the website, I look in the town information about the different committees that handle housing. I get some information, but then I sort of hit a dead end. Like, this is something that's from the town meeting that talks about the affordable housing. It talks about the current projects that are ongoing, Acapesket, Sam Turner, the 545, and I wonder, well, this is April, but now it's August. What's happening with these things? How do we get information? How do we let people know what's happening? I just saw in the paper that Dave Garrison went to the East Falmouth Association meeting, and the citizens really appreciated his face-to-face giving them information. And I feel like that's often missing, that people have no way to find out, well, what is happening? You know, you hear a rumor, well, this is happening. Well, that's not going to happen. Well, I heard that wasn't. So how can we find a way? So I've come to the center of power, the town manager and the select board. How can you get, maybe not weekly, but monthly reports out to the citizens and say, here's what we're doing, because I know you're doing a lot. But the frustration when you see people who have to worry about, I've got to go to work, but I've also got to figure out where I'm going to be when the seasons change. So, you know, anything you can do to let people know what's going on. I know there's a proposal, maybe a moratorium on Airbnb conversions. Anything you can do would be really, really appreciated by ordinary people like me who are just trying to figure out how we can help our friends. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Gifford. I live at 32 High Street in Woods Hole, and this is not on the agenda. I am here to read a statement from Dr. Molly Moynihan, who is a postdoctoral research at the Marine Biological Lab. She, at the last minute, was unable to come and read it herself. I am here to advocate for the need for more year-round rental housing in the community. Year-round rental housing is critical to supporting scientific community in Falmouth, and lack of housing is driving highly trained scientists away from our institutions and our community. Many of my colleagues, myself included, struggle to find housing. This is an issue of both affordability and availability, as there are so few year-round rentals available, and those that are available are often difficult to afford. I currently spend 50% of my income on rent, and I am in a seasonal rental where I have had to move out of my rental every summer. Many of my colleagues face the same problem of paying an unsustainable amount of their income for a rental unit and also have to move out of their homes seasonally, facing repeated uncertainty, stress about whether or not that they will have a roof over their heads. I've too often seen colleagues leave their jobs here due to unstable housing situations, and personally know of people in the scientific community who have experienced homelessness. These are highly skilled workers who want to contribute to this community, and they deserve a chance to have a stable roof over their heads. The lack of affordable, available rental housing causes significant stress and anxiety among postdocs and research assistants. Many of us spend months desperately searching for housing, often putting together a piecemeal solution in the final days and weeks before leaving our seasonal rentals. This stress impacts our ability to do our jobs and affects our mental health, ultimately taking away our ability to focus on the science that has made this community so special.
Your 2 minutes have come to an end, so if you
very
want to
much.
finish, if you have a little left to finish it up quickly, please.
I urge the board to take immediate action.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stone. I'm from Precinct 6 on Old Campus Drive. The recent news is full of climate change-induced weather disasters, massive and unprecedented fires in California, Hawaii, Louisiana, and Canada, which affected us here. Abnormally strong heat waves and temperatures across the U.S. and elsewhere, and a hurricane heading for California. Cape Cod has been spared these disasters, but that does not mean they can't happen here. They have in the past, and they will in the future, and they probably will be worse. We have not had a truly severe hurricane since 1938. In the 1938 hurricane, flooding in Buzzards Bay the surge went up 20 feet. We have not had extensive drought and fires since 1947, when there was a major fire in Beebe Woods. Embers rained down over downtown Falmouth. As an aside, I would say if that happens again, you'd have to basically evacuate Falmouth Hospital, Gosnold, JML Care Center, things like that. So it's a much bigger concern now because the prevailing winds tend to go in that direction. To prepare for the inevitables, we need a resilient and well-trained fire department and police force that are housed in robust facilities. And this is the point of my little chat here. Thus, it was shocking to see in the newspaper on Friday the state of the police headquarters. And news reports about how the station is at best marginally adequate. The town needs to do everything possible to prepare both our fire stations and our police facilities for the inevitable climate change emergencies. These are our first responders. If they can't get out, if they have an inadequate police station or fire department, we are all in trouble. So if you want to see an example of a police station that is being designed for climate change, take a look at the town of Medford, Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Hannah Vanderschuren. I am a Falmouth resident and research assistant at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole, and I'm here to advocate for more year-round affordable housing in Falmouth. Firstly, thank you to the Select Board for prioritizing affordable housing and giving community members an opportunity to speak to the issue. I'm one of the many early career scientists struggling to live in our community. Currently, I live in a year-round rental where 50% of my income goes towards rent. To spend this fraction of my income on rent is unsustainable. But when the opportunity to rent a year-round space, even at the top of my budget, became available, I seized it because I've seen the financial uncertainty, stress, and fatigue associated with moving seasonally. Constantly struggling to find affordable housing makes people question whether they belong here. It drives people away from and ultimately weakens the scientific institutions that Falmouth is renowned for. A survey at MBL showed that 40 to 45% of postdoctoral researchers and research assistants feel stress on a regular basis related to their housing situation. This is a workforce that sustains and enriches our community, but we're being priced out. I encourage the Select Board to use the power you have to remedy this issue. Immediate action needs to be taken to increase the inventory of affordable workforce housing. Educate the public and be explicit about your plans to manage wastewater alongside the development of affordable housing. Enable Falmouth to continue as the lively and scientific-minded community it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Finneran?
Same topic, affordable housing. It's obviously been in everyone's conversation in the newspaper and everywhere else for the last couple of weeks, as well as Mr. Renshaw's admonition to the as to the treatment of Kim Fish and Jed Cornock. I think the point was well taken, and I think that was misdirected a little bit because they were just being led. But I think that we obviously have to take closer looks at these things. And I think in doing so, first off, I mean, that kind of criticism isn't unprecedented. It happened about 10 years ago when the town paid for a study to find where it would be best to put affordable housing in Falmouth. And that came up with Webster Woods, for which Diane Thompson and others took quite a deal of criticism. I advocated for it in town meeting. It didn't pass. But I think, honestly, everything needs to be looked at. And to look at Webster Woods again, especially with the amount of people that are here tonight, from Woods Hole, lacking affordable housing, I don't think that anything can be left out of the mix, including Webster Woods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finneran. Any other public comment? Okay, let's move into committee interviews. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you and good evening, Madam Chair. Applicant Julie Bediger, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name, submitted her application to serve on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee on July 31st. Ms. Bediger is seeking a permanent position on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and her interest is in decreasing the amount of materials that go into the landfill. Madam Chair, there are currently 2 vacancies on the committee, one position with a term ending June 30th, 2026, and the other position with a term ending June 30th, 2024. It's my recommendation that the Select Board vote to appoint applicant Judy Bediger to fill one of the 2 vacancies on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And I believe Ms. Bediger is here.
Is Julie here? Please, come up to the podium. Yes, just, you can move it, sure.
Hi.
Anything that isn't on your application that you would like the board to know about you?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll go right to
Are
the...
there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
No, I think she filled out the application sufficiently, and I'm very interested to put somebody on who's got a mission, and she wants to get rid of some trash, and
I'm a bit of a crusader.
good, I like to hear that.
All right, so I will entertain a motion.
I would move appointment of Julie Bedinger for appointment to committee ending 6/30/26.
I'll second Mr. Brown's motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we can move right into public hearings. Mr. Zelinski, would you read the notice, please?
Falmouth Select Board hold a public hearing under Section 240-14.8 Wetlands Regulations of the zoning bylaws of the town of Falmouth on Monday, August 28, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, on the application of Wendy Nicodamus for permission to permit an existing bottom-anchored float system in Jenkins Pond located at 7 Compass Circle, East Falmouth, Mass. Area affected in Jenkins Pond. Interested parties may review the file on this hearing at the office of the Select Board per order of the Select Board. I apologize if I messed the name up.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just disclose, I live at Jenkins Pond, but I don't believe I need to recuse myself from this hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Scott Price. Mr. Renshaw, do you have anything that you would like to say before we hear from the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real briefly, July 25th of this year is when the attached application to permit to dredge, fill, or otherwise alter wetlands was submitted. As Select Board Member Zielinski stated, this project is to permit an existing bottom anchor float system in the waters of Jenkins Pond. Staff review and comments, both from the Conservation Commission and Marine Environmental Services regarding the project, were requested on August 21st. Conservation agent replied that the documents submitted by the applicant did in fact match those that were reviewed and approved at a hearing conducted by the Conservation Commission on June 28th. Marine Environmental Services responded the department has no objections or concerns. That's all.
Thank you. And you're here to represent the applicant?
I am, thank you. For the record, Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, the Nicodemus family. The Nicodemus family owns a house at number 7 Compass Circle on the waters of Jenkins Pond. I'm sharing with you a copy of the site plan. It shows where the house is, it shows the property in question, and it shows the frontage on Jenkins Pond. There's a very small bottom anchored float system. It consists of 2 4x6 float pieces connected to a 9x10 float. It projects out into the pond 21 feet. It has been there for decades, and they discovered by being notified by the Conservation Commission that it didn't have the benefit of any permits or approvals, so they came to us for assistance. We submitted an application to Conservation Commission to allow this float system to remain as it has been for a very long time, and that was approved. As we move through the process, we're subject to your jurisdiction, and we've applied for a special permit, again, to allow it to remain so that we can then proceed to the final step, which is to get a Chapter 91 license from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that's why I'm here. I also have a photo that shows, for a little more perspective on the size of the float. If you see this, you'll see that there's 2 small 4x6 sections and then a 9x10 section. Looks like I thought those might have been ducks, but they're not. They use this for just passive recreation. They sit on it, they swim off it, they sometimes launch a kayak off it. And it's posing no impacts or issues with Jenkins Pond, in our opinion, and that of the Conservation Commission. And if you grant the special permit, they can proceed on to the next step in the process. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board?
Not for me.
I didn't see any either. It was existing. Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion amongst the board?
That's fine.
Doesn't look harmful to me.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move approval of the dock proposed by Falmouth Engineering.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further conversation amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Okay, we'll move into business. Vote on the recommendation to file watershed permit notices of intent for all Falmouth watersheds designated by the state as nitrogen-sensitive areas. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packets tonight is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was delivered by our wastewater superintendent back on August 7th, just as a reference. We're not going to go through that this evening, but I did want to hit some background summary. As you all recall, in July of this year, the Department of Environmental Protection issued a modification to Title V, the regulation governing septic systems, as well as a set of new watershed permit regulations. The pair of regulations defines the watersheds to all coastal ponds with nitrogen total maximum daily load limits as nitrogen-sensitive areas, and in effect offers 2 options for those areas. The first option is that all property owners in these areas are required to upgrade their septic systems to, quote, best available nitrogen removing technology, end quote. Or as a second option, the town applies for watershed permits for these areas, providing the town's own plan and schedule to meet the TMDLs. The town must then implement the plan and schedule. Again, attached to the packet this evening is a presentation explaining these different options in a bit more detail and evaluating the pros and cons of each, and ultimately a recommendation. As the board may recall, the Board of Health and the Water Quality Management Committee both discussed these options at their respective meetings the week of July 31st and voted to recommend that the town apply for watershed permits. Each of those bodies submitted a letter to the Select Board indicating such. Madam Chair and Select Board, the recommendation from the Town Manager's Office through the Wastewater Superintendent is that the Select Board, by January 7th of 2024, file notices of intent to apply for watershed permits for all of Falmouth watersheds designated by the state as a nitrogen-sensitive area. That concludes my remarks. Be happy to answer any questions with the help and assistance of Amy Lowell, our Wastewater Superintendent.
So we remember that we went through, I hope everybody had an opportunity to review the PowerPoint. It was pretty clear. I remember Ms. Lowell spending quite a bit of time walking us through this because there's so much to it. But are there any questions either for Mr. Renshaw or for Ms. Lowell?
I do have one question. Although I'm very familiar with the
Ms.
wastewater.
Lowell, could you just in case, go ahead.
Although I'm very familiar with wastewater planning, I'm not exactly sure of all the implications of the watershed permit. And I want to know, can we maintain our same course of sewering the limited amount of areas that we've intend to, and using alternative technologies on the other side of Route 28 in the Hatchville and areas such as that? Or will this impact that?
So the new watershed permit regulations allow for allow the town to submit a watershed permit application that references an existing watershed plan, and the town has an existing watershed plan for Great Pond. So I believe that the town would submit that plan as its the backup for its watershed permit application for Great Pond, and based on what I've seen in the regulations so far, it looks like the state would be very happy with that, but would, as with all of them, require monitoring and checking in every 5 years to see how that goes. So there's an adaptive management aspect to it that allows both the town and the state to review progress over time and see how the actions that we've implemented work, and to make sure that we're implementing what we said we were going to, and to see how they work over time.
And that's all applications?
Yes.
Of anything that we decide to do? Thank
Yep.
you. Mr. Miscali?
Just a question. What's actually entailed? What do you need to do now in order to be able to file those permits by January?
So the first step is just a notice of intent to file a watershed permit application. And the reason to do that by January instead of within 2 years, which is the maximum time frame allowed, is that if we do not, then these Title V upgrade requirements begin to apply to all construction that would increase flow in the wastewater area. So this is to avoid the early implementation of that regulation. Submitting the notice of intent is very straightforward. It's an online application, and it really is you're just saying that you're going to apply for watershed permits and what the date is, what the schedule is for doing that. So I could do that. We don't need to hire somebody to do that, but it is a commitment. Obviously, it's a commitment to then file the watershed permit application within, at this point, 6.5 years, well, within 7 years, we'll call it. So the first step is easy. The next steps will be more work.
So it's subsequent to filing the notice that we actually start preparing the what we intend to do.
Right. So in January, we would file notices of intent for all of the watersheds in Falmouth that this applies to. And then within 7 years, and sooner, we hope for most, if not all of them, we would file watershed permit applications. And for the watersheds where we already have a plan, I think we can do that very quickly. For others, we will need to start the planning process, prepare a watershed management plan, and then apply for the permit. And the permit, again, even the watershed permit is really an online application that refers to an approved watershed plan.
So your goal is to have this done well in advance of the 7-year?
Yeah, well, it will be pending town votes, but yes, that would be the understanding that we'd follow up as soon as is practical.
One quick question. I see that WQMC has recommended this as well as the Board of Health, and I'm assuming this is your recommendation as well?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Look for a motion, Madam Chair?
Any discussion?
I do have one other question.
Go ahead.
I think for the town managers. Is there any sign of any funding that had been mentioned by the governor when this was released? Any updates on?
I've not seen any indication from the state as far as funding. Have you?
Yeah, I don't, other than there's been some general discussion that funding will be available. I have not seen any specifics of any grant programs as to what that funding will look like. There are, of course, some long established known funding sources in the form of the state revolving fund, zero interest loans, 2% loans. There's the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, which takes a 2.75% surcharge on the room excise tax and puts that into a Cape fund to offset a portion of the cost. And that fund has been aspiring to subsidize 25% of the principal costs, but with the construction spike, it's questionable now whether that will be sustainable. But in terms of specific new state funding, that has not been.
I have a question as well. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, if we vote this tonight, I suspect we might be one of the first towns in the affected area to do so. And I'd like to see some incentive from the state. And if we do vote this tonight, can we send a letter to whoever would be the appropriate authority to request consideration of funding for our advanced planning? Just want to keep reminding them as many times as possible that this is going to impact us financially, and we already have a plan, and now they're making us rush it.
Mine sort of goes along with that, but you made a statement, Ms. Lowell, that there are votes that need to be taken to move the plan forward, correct? What happens if we send the notice of intent and this does not pass? What happens then?
So at each step of the process, if the town does not move forward as planned by a certain deadline, then it reverts back to the Title V upgrade requirement. If we didn't vote by January, or if I didn't submit the notices of intent by January, there would be no issue there. But if in a couple of, so anyway, the short answer is it reverts back to the Title V upgrade requirements if you don't meet the deadlines in the regulation.
I think that's important for the public to know, that if we don't support, some of the things that you'll be asking for at town meeting, we're going to run into a problem.
Everyone's going to be on their own.
Everybody's going to be doing Title V. So I just think it's important to bring that out, and moving forward, I wouldn't want to miss that step of people not knowing.
Everyone's going to be
this
spending
is critical.
$35,000 plus, and it's not going to work.
Right. And if we don't vote it, it reverts right back, and we have no say over that.
Right.
That's not us. Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just needed to understand the process.
Madam Chair, I make the motion that the town file watershed permit notice of intent for all Falmouth watersheds designated by the state as nitrogen-sensitive areas by January 7th by way of the wastewater superintendent filing. Mrs. Lowell.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further conversation amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Very much.
Okay, we will move on to a report from the Golf Advisory Committee. Mr. Renshaw, do you want to, is there any
No, I
introduction
think
or anything?
Mr. Murphy is here to present to the board tonight.
Awesome. Oh, hi, Carrie Murphy.
I'm right here. Good evening and welcome. Mr. Renshaw, welcome to Falmouth. I don't think
Thank you,
a
sir.
belated welcome to Falmouth.
Thank you. I have to get to the course. I haven't done
I'm a
that.
fellow member of this board, so I know you're in good hands, and I know the community is very welcome to see you. So, a block of this tonight is going to be presented by the Indigo Troon Golf people with the operators of the golf course. The golf course itself operates, was one of the largest open space acquisitions the town ever put together. In addition to that, the recreational opportunities and the economic multiplying factor that this course represents to the community with hotels and restaurants, bars and things like that has been a big success story since 2005. So it continues to be a good success story. The numbers are very good. People are enjoying the course. The relationship with the town has been very, very good. Peter has been on top of it, and as past administrations and past board members. So we want to thank you. Golf is kind of a game of integrity and etiquette and gamesmanship, and all of those elements that we found at the golf course. We'd like to find out in society, and sometimes we do with the young people. It's a nice place to train, and it's a nice course, and we welcome anybody that wants to go out and enjoy it to go out and enjoy it. At this point, you have a PowerPoint presentation. You guys have it queued up, I hope. And
We have you slated for 15 minutes.
We'll be fast.
Okay.
Thank you, Kay. This is Ryan Phelps.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, Selectman. All right. Oh, thank you, Peter.
You got a foursome there, huh?
Yeah, we brought everybody. I'm gonna go first and then be gone because these guys
Let somebody else play through.
have the most fun. Yeah, exactly. Ryan Phelps, I'm the VP of Operations for Indigo Sports in Troon. Actually was a former GM here back in 2007, 8, and 9. So was my first job with the firm. What I wanted to show is just to talk about some financial results since we've been here. And if you look at this slide, and I know there's a lot of data up there, but in 2006, we did 33,000 rounds. That was the first year that we were involved. The first, I would call it first full year under our operation, we did 44,500 rounds. And you can see we kind of hummed along there at that lower to mid 40,000 rounds total for a while. In 2013, 14, and 15, it started to dip at around 40,000 rounds, and then hung in there essentially until COVID. If you look at what happened since 2020, it's been actually nothing short of phenomenal results. Keeping in mind in 2020, we were closed for a good 6 or 7 weeks when we were in complete shutdown, but we went from 40,000 rounds in 2019 and $1.4 million in revenue to 55,000 rounds in 2020 and $2.05 million in revenue. In 2021, we beat that again, $2.15 million. 2022 beat that again, $2.3 million. And this year are expecting to do $2.5 million in revenue, and that's just revenues associated with the town and what's shared with the town. And I'll get into that briefly, but what that means for the town of Falmouth is a total rent check, anticipated rent check in 2023 of $961,000. So typically we were in the $200,000, $300,000, occasionally $400,000 range, and then COVID happened. A lot of people moved down here. Golf is a naturally distanced sport. It's really been taking off nationwide, but especially in this part of the country. So the way our agreement works with the town is we lease the golf course, but understanding that we were in a semi-long-term lease arrangement and we wanted to share in success, we share 50 cents on the dollar of all revenues over 1.42 million. So really the genius of the town when they struck that deal years and years ago was that if something like this ever was to occur, the town would also benefit. And that's exactly what happens. In fact, and Troon's doing fine too, but in fact, as we're doing this well, Troon's actually economics get worse because we're so busy. We need more staff and more chem and more FERT and things like that. But from a financial perspective, the golf course couldn't be in better shape right now. So we're super ecstatic. This is the team. I'll introduce, this is Matt Burgess. He's the course GM. He's going to talk to you a little bit. And then Ryan Moody's actually the guy that does all the work. he's our head golf course superintendent, so he's in charge of making sure that the playing surfaces are up to par with what the residents and guests of Falmouth expect. So happy to answer any questions. The rest of it we'll go pretty quick on. It's just going to be programming, things like that. Just click. Oh, sorry, it's not touchscreen.
We should actually, go ahead, Matt.
You got it? He's the PowerPoint guy. All right.
Probably make it a little easier for people to see.
All right, so the meaning of this slide is basically residents come first. Whenever we do any of the pricing at the golf course, residents get the cheapest price. And there's been a few years where a lot of our grandfathered in outings, some of them, most of them are probably in-town groups anyway, but they've gotten really, really cheap pricing. So my rule of thumb is I want the resident pricing to be the cheapest pricing we offer. So I've been able, even after a few years of grandfathering in a few older groups, I've been able to get them even up to our resident pricing, which we still think is very competitive if you were to check other golf courses around the Cape. Our memberships, I still think, are very competitive if you look at even some of the other local courses, what they're charging. I mean, we have a membership that starts at $1,000. You can get a Twilight Pass, which you could play every single day after noontime, and it includes your green fees for the year. So, and we also, this year, we started dynamic pricing for our public non-resident play. So if you book online, it's kind of like the airline model, you know, based on supply and demand, the price goes up. It'll only come back down to a price that's about $10 more than the resident pricing. So again, the residents always get the cheapest price. Residents are instructed to either call the pro shop, call our reservation center, just not book online, because online is prepaid only. And if they book through there, they just got to come in, tell us they're a resident, prove it. You know, we're not super strict at the counter, but they just tell us they're a resident, and we'll immediately give them the cheaper resident pricing. We also give guests of residents, as long as they're playing with a resident, that we give them the resident price as well. So say your family's in town, we give them the resident price as well. So that's a pretty good deal.
You good?
I'm good, buddy. And again, just we're very, I think, involved in the community. We're still an Audubon certified golf course sanctuary where I works really hard, keeping the golf course up to that level with how he applies the chemicals and fertilizers to the golf course, how we treat the habitat, you know, creating little areas for, you know, the little critters to live around the golf course. And it's a pretty big undertaking, and it's just kind of become routine at this point. We're recertified every couple of years. Falmouth Commodores, we always have the back cover of that catalog. If you saw first base dugout this year, the entire banner on the home plate or on the first base dugout had our banner on it. And we have a banner in the outfield, and we've just had a big partner. We give the Commodores, they play golf at golf course for $5 while they're in town. So it's a real good deal. We're members of the Falmouth Cape Cod Chamber, high school. Kids play free. We're the home to the boys and girls high school golf teams. We've even helping out Mashpee this year, where they've needed some place to play for some days that they weren't able to play at some of the other clubs in Mashpee, and we took care of them for them. Player development. Again, we're very proud of what we do, I'd say, for juniors and women. We have so many events. Get Golf Ready for Golf for Women. We do the Falmouth Adult Ed, Kids Play Free with a Paid Adult, PGA Junior League, Boston U.S. Kids Tour, Cape Cod Junior Golf Association, any PGA Junior. We do the rec program for Joe and his team. Like I said, boys and girls high school golf teams, the Moore School After School program, the Lawrence After School program. I already said Falmouth Adult Education. We did a big statewide high school sectional qualifier for women's golf. The Hurricane Junior Golf event, which is a national event, and my head pro, who's been a member for over 25 years, gives tons of lessons, and a majority are to both women and children too. So, and I'm gonna pass. Oh, before I go, I just want to do a personal note. Ryan alluded to it. Ryan Muty. This year has been a tough weather year. We've had humidity. We've had rain. It's been a crazy year. Humidity is not good for golf courses. And if anyone's been to the golf course this year, I put it up against any golf course on Cape Cod. I've had friends that are either pros or members at private elite clubs around the state, and they said our greens were better than theirs. So he does it with a limited crew, mostly retirees. So it's that guy right there.
All right.
He does do all the work.
Hi, good evening. My name's Steve Howard. I'm the Senior Director of Sales and Marketing, working with Matt and team What I wanted to just run through, it's great to see the economic growth over the years, but it's equally as important to make sure that the customer experience and that our guests continue to have a good time when they're at Falmouth, because they're choosing to spend their time and their money. Happy to report. What I always like to do is compare last year to current period this year. Up slightly in the number of reviews, or in the rating rather, 4.5 out of 5 star. This is the online reputation. This is what people are going to research prior to ever playing at Falmouth. You can see seasonality in this slide, where, March it dipped down. We only had 1 review and it was not a favorable one, but there was no comment. The team does a great job of responding to comments that come in online, because just historically speaking, when we are customer centric and if we're listening and acknowledging great experiences, not so favorable experiences, that actually goes a long way with the public as they're choosing to play at Falmouth. And you can see the rating distributions, but this is something I report on every year. Here, I'm not going to read these, but these are some of the reviews that came through. Interestingly enough, not everybody leaves a comment. Everybody will just give a rating and move on. But those that do leave a comment, we want to just make sure that, again, we're responding to them. And so, all types of comments coming through, great for families, good for a new golfer. It's challenging, but not too challenging. So all of those things are feedback that Matt and his team make sure that we're addressing. And it also gives us valuable insights into, if there are areas of the course that we need to improve or a process needs to improve, this is where we get that knowledge base to be able to have those conversations and talk through it. Finally, for those who may not know, Falmouth actually has their own app. And so what we like to do is track the engagement with the app. And I'm a numbers guy, so I like comparing last year to this year to understand how we're doing. The revenue that I'm showing from the app is app attributed revenue. And what I mean by that is it's the same booking engine that you would see on the website. However, the app is attributed, that using the app is an indication to me for loyalty to the course. They're taking the time to download the app. They're using the app to book their tee times. And I'm happy to report that 2023 is slightly above 2022. And we had over 600 downloads this year. A lot of times, especially seasonally, people at the end of the season will clean their phones out, delete an app, and then they'll re-download it. So it's gray area, but the point is seeing that number rise. If it starts to plateau or shrink, then we've got a problem that we need to talk about and build a strategy around, but that's not the case here. So all in all, from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective, you saw the numbers. Matt and his team does a phenomenal job from a customer experience. I have multiple courses in the Northeast, and Falmouth is among the highest in terms of the experiences and the feedback that we get. So I'm really proud to be working alongside Matt and his team. And I'm trying to stay on time. I always go last on this, but I think that's our last slide, so.
You're good.
All right, thank you.
Questions from the board? Comments, questions? Mr. Muscali?
Yeah, what's the process to prioritize improvements to the course, whether it's bunkers or, making some improvements to the course? How are they determined?
We haven't contemplated large-scale capital improvement in some time. So in 2010, when we did the first extension agreement, Billy Casper Golf at the time, which we've since been acquired, did a roughly $200,000 project as a part of our bid to the RFP. Once, really what needs to occur or should occur is we should identify needed capital improvements and then try to write those into the next RFP so that for-profit operators like us can come in and make a bid. Some of the challenge, and I think the town has spent considerable dollars on an irrigation system and a few other things that were necessary, but really, while we're still paying for the golf course, or the taxpayer is, or the townspeople, I should say, the focus has just been on grinding out as much revenue as we can, getting to where that debt service is paid, and then turning around and saying, all right, now what do we need to go do? But there is plenty of work that can be done out there.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I would just comment that I'm glad to see that all the investment we've put into that facility seemed to be paying off and working out nicely for the public.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much.
Just to
Mr.
wrap
Murphy?
up,
Go ahead.
I want to thank Joe Olenek. He's done a fabulous job. If it's not pickleball, he doesn't have as many problems with the golf course, so we're very happy. I want to thank Barbara Dixon, Brian Arthur, Chris Nanaho, Chuck Eastman, Richard Bowles, and Rob Pacheco, who are also on the committee and do a great job. And finally, there are some capital improvements, and Peter's been talking about the roof at the maintenance barn and slotting them into a process that is going to make them needed improvements. It is a town-owned building. You know, we all own it, and we're trying to find some solutions. And I think working with Peter, we've done a great job. So that's going to be the next big process for us. So I will have a meeting with the committee in the fall, and the public is invited. But we invite all of you and Mr. Renshaw to go out. Are you a golfer at all? Or?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay, we like this. All right. Good. We'll have you come out and we'll.
I haven't been out yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, we'll get you out there sometime. But and invite any of the board members, the administration, and I want to thank Diane in your office also. She's been fabulous, and making sure we're staying up with the committee and doing things that you do. So thank you very much, and thank you for all your support. And we will see you next year for our annual checkup.
Thank you.
Thanks for all those community events that you've encouraged. That's good.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to the 6-month compliance review of the entertainment license Town Hall Partners, LLC, DBA Timber, 23 Town Hall Square, Falmouth. Mr. Renshaw, do you want to kick that off?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Select Board issued entertainment license number 066-AAENT to Town Hall Partners, LLC, doing business as Timber, back on February 13th of this year. Within that license, there were specified conditions stating that the building must be so insulated that all entertainment, musical or otherwise, will not be heard outside of the building under the following conditions. Soundproofing panels are installed to prevent sound from emanating from the building, and the license is subject to this compliance review in 6 months. The license is valid until December 31st of this year. A report of noise complaints from the period of February 14th, 2023 through August 24th, 2023 was requested from the Falmouth Police Department. There were no noise complaints reported to Falmouth PD during that time.
Okay, is there anyone here from Timber?
Eddie Reed, the General Manager of Timber. How you doing?
Great. Good. How are you?
So good. We feel good that we haven't had any noise complaints, and I think that's good. I feel like since I've been there, we've kind of kept it controlled. You know what I mean? We're shutting down a little bit earlier. And I think that's been good for us.
Okay. Any comments? Okay.
Bear with me. It's worse than 6 months ago. Still not my style. How are you? Good, how are you? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. So, Linda Samortis, 137 Main, less than 25 feet directly behind Timber. So I'm speaking for the condo association tonight. So we at 137 are the closest abutters that reside there day and, more importantly, night, and that's really what this is all about. So, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, the OGs and the new, Mr. Mascali and Mr. Renshaw, welcome, and of course, Mr. Johnson-Staub. So I realize tonight's meeting is about the compliance. Not to repeat what you read about the noise not being heard outside the building. Soundproofing was the key, 6 months to comply. I want to thank the board for taking our anguish seriously. And after many calls to the police, emails, and many meetings, you made this happen. So far, it certainly has helped, I have to say. If 10 was the best, I'm going to give it a good 7. You know, it's never going to be perfect. I guess I'm just one of those people. You know, I know sometimes when the door is open, you still can hear it. I have made no calls to the police. You have not received any emails from me. You know, you definitely can hear when I don't know the proper terms because I'm not a bowler, when the pins drop, the noise, 10 lanes, and I'm kind of right behind that. And I don't know how many panels were put up. I wish that Timber had made an effort to invite me over because I was one of the main ones that was complaining because we're so close there, to show me the process. I would have appreciated that. But I don't know if the time schedule is still in effect after tonight. I think that was very helpful. It was Wednesday and Thursday till 9:30, Fridays and Saturdays to 11. That 11 o'clock thing is the best because 11 to 1 used to be awful. Oh, the whole night was awful, but 11 to 1, please. So I do have a question that I know, I don't know if things are being changed tonight as far as time, or if that remains in effect until December 31st, and everything else is in effect until the 31st when everything comes up again. You know, so, like, is everyone on their best behavior? You know, you know what I'm saying, you know. But I just, I want to thank Timber and hope that, you know, you continue to prosper and we can live in peace as neighbors in a very tight neighborhood. So you all know me, you've all witnessed all of this for such a long time. So I've missed you in 6 months. But
We missed you too.
No, you haven't. But I want to thank you for listening and for hearing, and I want to thank Timber. I know they were held to task on this. I know it's expensive, but I know there are resources there, and a few more panels probably would be good, and I'm going to wait for my invitation, and I like a martini dry, rocks on the side, 2 olives.
Thank you.
Wow.
You know where to find me.
Any questions, comments from the board?
We would certainly revisit any, you know, on their renewals. That's when it would be discussed again. They're not on probation for anything. They've done a great job.
Right.
Right?
And the license is up in December.
Right.
December 31st, so we'd be looking at it
You owe a
again.
drink.
I think the time schedule is the best solution, is to keep it that time schedule that we apply for.
Okay.
I couldn't hear that.
Keeping it that same time schedule is best. You know, it keeps the, you know.
So when you're going to keep that time schedule for now, and when you reapply, you'll actually put it in writing, the time schedule, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
How's the
Mr.
business, still working out okay with the
A little
new
down.
situation?
It's a little down. I think weather has not cooperated, you know, when it's rainy, where it's great there. When it's not rainy, it's not that great.
I see, right. Indoor sports, right?
Yeah, right. It's like any
Okay,
business.
but still reasonably good?
Yeah.
Can I ask something about putting up again?
Go ahead, because go ahead, quickly.
So have you had DJs with amplified music during these sessions?
A few things we've had, but we've just kept it very to a minimal.
Could you stay closer to the mic, please?
Sorry.
Yeah,
We've kept it to a minimal. You
Okay.
know, we haven't had a ton of stuff, just because it's usually get late bookings. It's hard to book some, but we've definitely had some people, so we've just really kept control of it.
Great. Okay, so we will see you back in December unless something comes up in the meantime.
Thank you for your hard
Thank
work,
you.
too.
Appreciate it. I
think
don't
it's just a
believe,
review.
I don't believe we have a vote. We don't have a motion. No.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, appreciate it. Of course. Okay, we will move on to a request for a variance to the sign code 184-5, flashing signs, and 184-26, A, illumination, Cape Verdean Club of Falmouth, 126 Sandwich Road. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Cape Verdean Club of Falmouth Incorporated submitted an application for a sign permit through the Building Department, which was previously rejected because the Building Department determined that the type of LED signage that is being proposed has the ability to continuously change its message screen. During its review, the building department also determined that the proposed sign is classified as a flashing sign whose illumination is not kept at a constant intensity at all times when in use, and which exhibits changes in light, color, direction, or animation. Madam Chair, Select Board members, flashing signs, as you know, are prohibited in Section 184-5, subsection B. In Chapter 184-26, subsection A, also requires that signs be illuminated only with steady, stationary, and shielded light sources. Madam Chair, Select Board, based upon the review and comments provided by the Building Department, the town manager, myself, is recommending the Select Board deny the request for a sign variance as presented and requested by the applicant.
And is someone here for the applicant? Come on up.
I'm Philomena Gilbert from the Cape Verdean Club. The sign will not be flashing. It's one of those you can control. It'll be a steady light like the one at the fairgrounds. It has dimmable. Somebody asked about if it could be dimmed, just like your phone. It's run off a computer, so you can have it as bright or as low as you would like from the control on your, because it'll be run from a computer or an iPhone.
Okay. Questions from the board?
I suspect, if I could, Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead.
I suspect that the building department was concerned of the capacity for it to be reset in a different mode rather than the one you've described. And
No, you set, when you program it into your computer, you set it at the mode you want, and we would never use a flashing. It would be like Barnstable Fairgrounds, just the red and the black background.
I see, but I think he's looking for one that doesn't have the capacity to be flashing, so there's no accidental engagement of that other function. You know what I mean?
I know what you
I know that it's hard to accept when you don't intend to do that, but if it has that capacity and the manager changes, they're not aware of the rule, sometime in the future it could become a problem, and then you'll have, have to revisit this. You may have to buy a different sign. It could, here's where the problem could come in. I suspect that's the motivation with the building department not approving this type of equipment.
Go ahead. So is there an option to purchase one just like the one at the fairgrounds that only has one mode? Or is this one just like the one that they have at the fairgrounds that has multiple modes?
This is not like the one they have at the fairgrounds. The one they have at the fairgrounds was like $8,000. So this one is not as expensive, and it's not as big. We're just putting, it's only 40 inches as opposed to 4 feet or 3 feet, whatever the fairgrounds is.
Gotcha,
And
thank you.
Go ahead,
And
Mr.
you've
Costello.
already purchased this?
No, we have not.
Not yet purchased?
We're waiting,
So, would it be possible to purchase a different sign that doesn't have this
We'll look into it.
capability?
We will look into it. One that does not have a flashing capability.
I will say that we did recently approve a lighted sign for I think it's called the Cape Cod Church, which is also on Route 151. And we were really thinking that through carefully because, illuminated signs on the roadway is kind of a concern. But they assured us that it was, it had lower capacity and it was limited. So we felt it was a safe option. So maybe there could be something that would be more like that. That might be still useful.
Because it's not flashing.
Right.
Go ahead.
It might be a good idea to go visit the people that purchased that and see what company that was, and maybe you could stage down from that.
Absolutely.
And then use those dynamics as part of your application process, so everybody's on the same page with it. And then when you come back, it'll be
Thank you.
easier for everybody.
It
Makes
might
sense.
be more affordable too, with less
Yeah.
features.
True.
Is there a timeline for when you're looking to have this sign to be able to use
No,
it?
we just wanted it to put up so people would know the events that are open to the public, like our fair coming in September, and our cultural things that we're doing, line dancing for people to learn Creole dances, how to cook Creole food. That's all we just wanted, just so people know stuff that's open to the public.
Okay.
Big club.
The big club, yeah,
Yes,
the old
ma'am.
big club, yeah.
So asking you to do a little bit more research on some options is not going to hinder anything
No.
that you have? Okay,
No.
just wanted to check.
No.
So do I have a motion from the board?
I'd make a
Can we-
motion to deny and or to table this until they could come back.
Yeah, tabling would be better
I
if,
prefer tabling to denying at this point.
Why don't we do that then? I'll make a motion to table this till she can come back with some other options in the program.
And the issue's really the flashing piece.
just, I would not limit it to that, just whatever the building department pointed out, that there were a couple of things that didn't meet the sign code. I think one might have been the size of it as well. Is that correct?
No, she said everything was, she told me, because I went down there,
Okay.
and she told me everything was okay except the flashing.
So, okay, maybe I was looking at, maybe I was looking at the old sign. Was-
17 feet, excuse me.
Maybe I was looking at the old sign that was
Yeah.
bigger than,
It's only 40 inches high.
the new one is smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion to table this and ask Ms. Gilbert to come back with a different proposal. Do I have a?
If needed,
Yes,
because
yes.
she might find something that meets the code requirement.
So do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the capital plan presentation. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you all know, per the town charter, Select Board is required to submit the plan to the Finance Committee for review with or without any amendments. A vote to submit the plan at this meeting tonight will afford the Finance Committee sufficient time to complete its very thorough review of each of the requests. As a bit of background summary, we've made several changes this year to the capital improvement plan. It's more comprehensive than in years past in that we've asked departments to identify all of the capital spending regardless of funding source. This gives us a little bit more complete picture of the amount of work required of our staff to carry out these projects. As you know, that capacity bandwidth we've talked about in the past has been an issue. I think this addresses most of that. The plan also highlights substantial improvements undertaken with funding from grants, as has been mentioned earlier this evening, and community preservation funds, which are primarily Falmouth tax dollars with some subsidy from the Commonwealth. Another adjustment made this year to the review process is that we've asked departments to identify a project manager for each project so that it's clear who's responsible for carrying out the project. And we feel this is going to enable the town manager's office to confirm that staff doing the work are actually doing the work in order to complete the project within the 3-year time frame. You're going to see that the individual request forms now include identification of how the proposed capital spending relates to the Select Board strategic plan. We thought that was important to make that nexus or connection to the strategic plan. The scope of infrastructure and equipment that the town is responsible for maintaining is vast, as you know. Consistent investments in capital improvements are required to maintain these assets for the benefit of Falmouth residents and our visitors. Madam Chair and Select Board, the proposed capital plan seeks to strike a fine balance. As you know, if we don't spend enough, we run the risk of creating a backlog of projects or of required improvements. And if we fall behind, it's difficult to sometimes catch up. On the other hand, if we are too ambitious, we run the risk of depleting our reserves, which increases the financial burden on residents and property owners, and having unspent funds sit stagnant. The town manager, assistant town manager, and the finance director have met with every department head submitting a request for funds. That process unfolded over about a month and a half. The projects proposed for the coming year represent the upper limit of what we believe we can accommodate within our fiscal policies and what staff are prepared to carry out. Again, that capacity and bandwidth. We anticipate free cash will be certified sometime between late September and mid-October. The FY23 actual local receipt revenues were $11.9 million greater than the estimates relied on to balance our budget. As has been the case in recent years, there will also be a significant turnback of budgeted dollars, which were unspent for FY23. We do not yet have a precise estimate with regards to free cash, but as I mentioned, we're looking for that perhaps by mid-October. But we anticipate it's going to be greater than $15 million this year. Additional highlights are going to be addressed in about a 6 or 7 slide deck that I'm going to ask the assistant town manager to run through with you.
Yes.
The air conditioner went into auto shut-off mode. I think if you just turn it on, it'll kick right on.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure.
So I will be brief. The town manager has already touched on
a lot of the main points that we wanted to cover tonight. As he said, when putting together a capital plan like any other budget plan, we're looking to strike a balance between all of the things that we need to do and the things that we want to do, how much money we have available to pay for them, what can we afford, and then in terms of workload and capacity, how much can we get done in the case of capital spending, not just within a 1 year, but within a reasonable period of a couple of years. So as we look at that, as we're evaluating the requests that come in and determining which ones get funded, we look at capital spending priorities. These actually come from your select board policies. We did make one minor adjustment to the first bullet point here, which is imminent threat to the health and safety of citizens, employees, and property. We inserted the word employees there. It's relevant to some of the capital improvements that we're looking at this year, and so wanted to make sure that that was included. Other priorities that we look at from your policy: preservation of operations, legal requirements that come from the federal or state agencies, improvement of infrastructure, and improvement in the efficiency and effectiveness of service delivery. Mr. Renshaw highlighted some of the changes from prior years. I won't reiterate all of it. The point of emphasis here is that I wanted, I see we have a member of our Finance Committee here tonight, and I want to assure the Finance Committee that this, what may be perceived as an increase in spending, is largely a change in being more comprehensive, identifying all of the projects that are really capital spending regardless of funding source. So we have grant-funded items in here, we have operating budget items in here, we have Community Preservation Act funded items, borrowing items, all presented comprehensively so that you and the community have a full picture of all of the capital improvements that are underway. And I think it helps all of us better understand the full picture of what we're investing and also the work that's required to get all of that done. And the town manager did identify just some changes on the form that will help us in terms of connecting to the strategic plan. And again, making a more explicit connection to make sure that it's clear. Sometimes we have capital requests that are submitted by the customer, right? So the library has facility improvements that they need. They're the customer, but the department that's doing the work is largely DPW, Public Works. So we want to make sure that the department doing the work is signed off on any work that they're expected to do. So that was the reason that we felt it was important to put the project manager identified in writing on the request forms. So again, I mentioned the change in the approach here to be more comprehensive. When we look at the funding sources and we're striking that balance between what we can afford and what we need to and want to accomplish, the free cash is our largest funding source aside from borrowing, right? So when we're looking at cash capital or pay-as-you-go, free cash is the largest item, and we want to spend as little of that as we can, frankly, because we've discussed in prior presentations, both here and with town meeting, that we have very strong reserves right now, but we would like to make them even stronger, and there are communities on the Cape that on a percentage basis do have stronger reserves than we have. So there really is a reason to not spend all of that free cash. So when we look at funding sources, we're looking at what are all of the other ways that we might pay for this project other than free cash, and then sort of look at free cash last. So you'll see in this plan, we have allocated some funds from prior capital appropriations, whether it's in the case of the police station, we're sort of revisiting priorities from a prior capital project. In other cases, we just have some funds left over from a project that was completed, so we look at reallocating that. We are allocating some embarkation funds for capital improvements that are specifically tied to ferry service impacts. And then we certainly look for grants, special revenues, and other funding sources. So here's a breakout by funding source of what the spending proposed looks like. 11.6 million, just under 11.6 million from free cash. We're drawing on capital stabilization funds, and I would note there that the amount that we're drawing out is slightly less than the amount that we are appropriating in, so there's still a slight net increase in the capital stabilization fund when you look at the amounts going in and coming out. Water stabilization fund we've talked about the water mains and the need to get going on that. The board has approved an increase in water rates, but that's ramping up over 3 years to get to where we need to be. So in order to accelerate that, the water main replacements this year, we're drawing on water stabilization funds. We have several other special revenues at $485,000. Operating budget funded items like police vehicles, which have historically been in the budget, so that's not a change here. It's the only change is that we're showing it, listing everything in the same place. And water rates combined, that's $900,000. We have a reallocation of unspent bond proceeds for $410,000, transfer from existing articles at $1.3 million. Grants and donations, as Select Board Member Brown pointed out earlier, $7.3 million. Those are all approved, so those are not applications. Those are actual funds that have been approved. And then Community Preservation Act, those are applications for $3.3 million. So the total non-borrowing or cash capital plus grants is $26 million. And I did want to mention that we had about $2.4 million of requests that are not being recommended because of a lack of available funds or capacity to get them done. Our borrowing projects, I believe the board is familiar with most of these. The first one is the sewer system, the design of sewer system extension to Ticket Path and Northeast Mara Vista. That amount had previously been $4.5 million. It's actually come down to $3.8 million, and that is because of a change in design from gravity sewers to low-pressure water mains. So there's some pros and cons with it. From a maintenance standpoint, gravity would have been preferable, but that required some easements. We couldn't get the land that was needed for the lift stations to carry out that gravity system design. So this is the plan that we're going forward with. It's a slightly smaller project, so the design is a little less. Then the construction cost for that same project, and that will not be brought to town meeting until April of next year. That's $41.3 million is our current estimate for that. That estimate will be updated through the design process. And then lastly, for borrowing projects, we have the North Falmouth Elementary School roof replacement at $4.9 million. And again, that will be an April town meeting action, not November. In closing, some other highlights in terms of what we are proposing to spend. We discussed at a workshop a feasibility study for the police station. So this is a feasibility study to look at options to replace the existing police station. And we believe that is necessary both for a combination of reasons, the size of the facility and the condition of the facility. And then in my next breath, I'm going to say that we are looking for funds to improve the current police station. Even though we're looking to replace it, it needs to be made habitable. We certainly want to limit that expenditure as much as we can. This price tag is frankly a little uncomfortable at $500,000, but we need to make the building safe and healthy for our employees and the public. Also part of the reason that this cost is as high as it is because construction costs continue to just be really high. Our facilities manager was speaking with an engineer recently that does a lot of public sector construction work, and across the state, bids are coming in way over budget. We thought that with the supply chain issues worked out, the construction prices would moderate, and those supply costs have moderated somewhat, but the labor costs are still way up, and that's what is causing this increase.
I have a question on this one. So that's just for the building station exterior, the $500,000?
Yes.
Where would the money to work on the interior, just simply to make it habitable as we move forward?
Right.
Where would that come from?
So that comes from that existing appropriation. So I believe it was a $1.4 million appropriation, and that was for interior improvements.
Got it. Thank you.
And we might revisit that wording. The purpose of that $500,000 is to make the building habitable, to keep the moisture out and address anything inside the building that needs to be addressed. So we might look at that phrasing a little bit. There is exterior work that's needed to keep the water out. But the other thing that we wanted to just be very careful of is in terms of the message that was brought to town meeting and how we said the money was going to be spent. If it's not consistent with how we said it was going to be spent, we want to reappropriate it.
Okay. I think that would be wise.
Another big item that is in this capital plan is a replacement of our public safety radio system. And that's not just the radios themselves, but the infrastructure, the antennas. The whole system is in need of replacement. It's a substantial investment, but it's needed to maintain reliable communications for our public safety officers. The financial management system needs to be replaced. The system that we have now, the only thing good that can be said about it is it's very low cost. We don't have a choice. It is being phased out. This is one of those software companies that was bought out, and the parent company that bought it is no longer supporting the current application. So we really have no choice but to replace the system. And the finance team and the town manager's office feels pretty strongly that we really need to make an investment that's going to enable us to have a comprehensive system that includes all of our different financial modules so that we can have much better automation and much better reporting. It's a very manual, error-prone system that we have. Now, we have excellent staff, so they monitor everything very carefully, and our books are very solid. Our audit comes back clean, but we are wasting staff resources, and we're not getting the information that we need to be able to be a high-performing, data-driven organization. It's just our current financial system is not capable of that, so we need to make an investment. And that will be significant impact on the operating budget as well, so you'll be hearing that from us when we talk about the FY25 operating budget. We have $1.4 million allocated for a wastewater outfall. This is something the board, I believe, is well familiar with. That estimate is updated and higher than what it had been previously, but Amy Lowell, wastewater management superintendent, has indicated that that is what is required for the first phase of permitting of that critically important project. Total spending on water main replacements proposed for this year is $2.3 million. We didn't quite reach that $3 million target that we're striving for because those water rates are only going to be effective for half of this fiscal year, but it's a good start. In addition to the North Falmouth roof that I mentioned earlier as a borrowing project, there is another $1.8 million allocated for the schools, so that's a pretty significant investment for our school department. And then lastly, the Upper Coonamessett River restoration. I believe the board is aware that we received a grant for that project, but it is a very significant project and will be requiring significant time from our public works staff, so we wanted to make sure to highlight that as well. So again, we've talked about the need to strike a balance. We believe that this plan represents the upper limits of what we can afford. It also represents the upper limits of what we think we can accomplish in a reasonable amount of time. And we are seeking your vote tonight to submit this plan to the Finance Committee, which will undertake a very detailed review. And we're happy to take your questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have a few. I wonder on the line item for the West Falmouth Fire Station, can we include looking into that ambulance bay idea in the $80,000 that's appropriated for the West Falmouth Station? The consideration of the back step and the structural issues associated with it. I saw that the deck was laid on the roof in a kind of a improvised construction there. So I wonder if the deck will get larger, supporting on the outside walls. There's going to be some consideration, and I wonder if, at that same time, if they think about those little outcropped structures that are there, if they're sensible to keep, or if they would be part of a different plan where the ambulance bay might be incorporated.
So let me start the conversation, and I'll let Peter jump in as well. So we have increased funding for this particular item. I requested some additional funds be applied for what I'll call a structural kind of evaluation of the facility to find out what options we may have for the time that we're going to be in Station 4. So I thought that was important. I believe there was, what, 30,000, 35,000 of that 80 that's for the back step, the access stairwell up the back side of the building. So the balance would be utilized for that structural evaluation and report.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, I thought you were saying go.
Well, no, I have several, so if you want to go.
No.
Okay. I was just curious, when we looked at the revenue sheet, it didn't say anything about taxes and local receipts, but it listed other. Did I just miss that somewhere?
So the projects that are funded from the operating budget would be from taxes, from raise and appropriate.
Oh, I see, okay.
But traditionally, the lion's share of the non-borrowed does come from free cash and not from raise and appropriate. Something we could potentially revisit. You know, the model that we have is fine, but what some other communities do that also works well is, you know, if we think we're going to be spending $10 million a year on a cash basis, we could put that within the budget, raise and appropriate, and that will reduce our free cash, but we will also not need the free cash for that purpose.
Okay, thank you for reminding me that. I do have a few more if I keep going. The dredging annual inlet engineering was $150,000 requested, but zero proposed. Is that a permitting issue, that we don't have the permits? Or?
It's a matter of they have substantial funds that are unspent. And
Okay.
we had, you know, a good conversation with Greg Frazier, our Marine Environmental Services Director, and this is not going to slow down our work.
And I was curious about the Cedar Lake herbicide application, the $50,000 that was also not recommended. Is that, I mean, Cedar Lake is so, it's a nightmare. And they've identified the fanwort, which is an invasive species, which is like taking over the whole pond, and they hired a consultant, and they've come to realize they need some extra help because they just can't raise enough funds. I know it's a neighborhood-specific item, but is that possible that could be restored to the...
So we could certainly consider it. I'll tell you the reason that it was not funded is it was the first year it's requested. It's a 5-year plan. You know, we normally like to see things on the plan before they're funded. But also we were not familiar with any sort of comprehensive look, and it may be that, you know, there's a volunteer group that has done this work, but at the staff level, we haven't seen an evaluation of, you know, here are all the ponds, here are all the issues that we have at all the ponds, and which is the most important pond. We did do some vetting preliminarily about, you know, this solution, and conservation and MES took a look at what was being proposed. They didn't have any objection to it. But again, if we're going to be spending money on pond treatment of vegetation, you know, we thought it was a little premature to just sort of pick one because it was requested.
Right. I think it's a unique situation with this invasive species that I don't think I've ever seen or heard of it before. And one person, I went to the Friends of Cedar Lake meeting as a member of the Falmouth Water Stewards, and one person in attendance said they had a suspicion that somebody dumped an aquarium into the pond. And fanwort is something that you find in aquariums, but it just proliferated to the point where a fish can't even get in there. The fish are all gone. The pond is essentially dead. I mean, it's sort of an emergency, so I just hope maybe we can revisit that. And the water and the air stripping tower, let's see, those are the only real ones that were deleted that I was concerned about. Can you tell me anything about the water air stripping tower that was removed?
Yes and no. I'm not going to be able to give you the technical details of it, but what I can tell you is that the water superintendent was given a choice of funding that or putting more money into water mains, and he chose water mains.
So it's not critical? Okay. Okay.
Mr. Muscally and then Mr. Zelinski. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure. Just one question on the use of embarkation fees and the parking meters. So the parking meter replacement would be townwide?
Nope. Nope. And so the parking meters are being replaced in Woods Hole and Robbins Road, and there was another location or two that I'm not remembering. So we funded half of the cost of the parking meter replacements with embarkation funds. And Robbins Road is, of course, right near the marina, and the Woods Hole are in Woods Hole. So we felt that was an appropriate use of embarkation funds.
Tied to the embarkation fee in the statute. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's good because they don't work.
Mr. Zelinski, has a question? Go ahead.
Mr. John Staub, is there any, in the police budget, is there any allocations for the displacement of departments or services while we're fixing the building up?
So we're not there yet. We are seeking feasibility study to determine what the long-term future of the police station will be. And then we'll come back and we'll be asking for design money for a police station. And then we'll come back probably separately to ask for construction funding. So when we go for construction funding, if they are going to be, we're going to have to figure out the relocation cost will need to be addressed as part of
I'm talking about in the meantime, though.
For during interior improvements.
Right.
That is not something that we've discussed. I don't know to what extent it's contemplated that there will be a need for officers to be in a different location, but
Well, when you're getting into mold and things like that, Mr. Brown would probably attest to the fact that you never know what you're going to get into once you start ripping into it.
Yeah.
So if they get displaced, I'd be curious to know how we're going to pay for setting those guys up.
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to look at that.
Thank you.
Another question, Mr. Brown, and then I'll go to Ms. Scott Price.
That triggered my other question that we deleted the $80,000 for the police training room upgrade, and I didn't ask because I assumed that was part of the fact that we're rethinking what we're doing at the police station right this minute.
Yes, and we can't fund everything.
Right.
Ms. Scott Price?
My question was about the ATVs. So I see that Fleet Services asked for an ATV, but I recall we recently received a message, a complaint about people using ATVs off-roading, and there was a reply from a police officer that we didn't have one or we didn't have enough of them. So I'm wondering if Fleet Services doesn't have one, the police asking for an ATV?
It is for the police department.
So this one is the
Yeah,
ask for the police department?
Because the Fleet Services does the maintenance of the vehicles and the purchasing of the vehicles,
Okay.
We have them submit the request. So that is for the police department.
Okay, but we're not funding that. But it's not listed in here as being funded.
Right.
Because
we can't fund everything.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's correct. So I stand corrected. There was a separate request from the water department for an ATV to use for inspection around the Long Pond watershed. So that was the request that was not funded. The police department does have a fleet of ATVs. There are some challenges with the condition of those ATVs.
Okay. Would the police department have access to the one that is being purchased?
It's really not. It's equipped differently because the one that the water department is using is going to have a back end that's to store equipment that would be cumbersome for the police department for their purposes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. I noticed that we have a problem with the library slate roof, and I just wanted to share that a common problem with slate roof is using the wrong fastener. Slate roofs can only be fastened with solid copper nails. They may have used galvanized or stainless steel. Stainless steel nails are actually stainless steel coated. They're not really stainless steel. So that's a common mistake, and it's very likely that the slates could be removed, stacked, and reinstalled without throwing them away, and I hope that we can consider that when they're looking into the remedy. They had that problem at the Centerville Fire Station, and it was just 8 years after they built it, the slates were sliding off, and they had to replace the whole roof. They chose to go with the asphalt roof and get rid of the slates, but I hope we don't go that route, because, I mean, I think you could actually save money if you just took them off and stacked them and put them back on.
So my only comment would be to really, to thank the department heads and also the town manager's office on the process. And I love the idea of assigning a person to be responsible for the project, and also how this request is tied to the strategic plan and the priorities of the board. I think that is really well done, and going and reading them all and seeing the connection is, I think, an excellent process. So I want to thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I would second your comment on the presentation of the budget and the improvements of the delivery of it, and also the continuation of the color photos at the end with the description of what we're buying and all the reasons for it. So it couldn't be any more comprehensive, and so it's very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, very well done.
And Madam Chair, I just had one comment,
Yes.
just generally. So this is literally my 15th capital budget. I was nothing but impressed by the effort of the department heads. Certainly Peter Johnson-Staub, the assistant town manager, his background and experience. Mr. Centeo, our finance director, and Melanie Bush. I specifically want to call those two out. In your packets, I think there's some examples of some of the spreadsheets. We call it the master spreadsheet. That really gives us the ability and the flexibility to drill down and really pull out a lot of more valuable information. So want to commend Ed and Melanie for their work on that master spreadsheet. Really powerful tool, management tool going forward. So again, nothing but impressed with the level of attention to detail that the department heads put into the process. And what was a month and a half, 2 months worth of work, their work in advance and their dedication to it made my work much easier.
Great.
So with that, I'd recommend, Madam Chair, if I may, that the Select Board vote to submit the capital improvement plan to the Finance Committee with or without amendments. And again, as I stated earlier, the prompt action will afford the Finance Committee the time it needs to really thoroughly review and meet with the department heads to kind of drill down and get that information.
Would someone like to make that motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the town manager's request.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very well done. Thank you. Okay, we will move into the consent agenda. I will read through each item on the consent agenda. If anyone would like to hold it, please notify me as the chair, and we will hold the item. Licenses: approve the updated application by the Falmouth Yacht Club, 290 Clinton Ave, Falmouth, for a change of manager and a change of officers. Administrative orders: approve the petition by NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for permission to install one FO pole to be labeled 912235A in the right-of-way approximately 75 feet northeast of an existing pole 912235. This pole location is necessary to provide electric service to 233 Brick Kiln Road, Falmouth, for the dog park. Vote to accept Natural Resources Conservation Services, NRCS, technical assistance grant to the town of Falmouth in the amount of $83,400 to prepare a design for fish passage on the Quashnet River under Martin Road. Vote to approve request to withdraw $7,046.40 from the beach donation account to fund the beach department's staff awards banquet. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to move the items on the consent agenda.
Move that, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move the items on the consent agenda. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, town manager supplemental report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have no supplemental report this evening. We're
Wow.
right on schedule, too.
Wow, okay. Select board reports. Mr. Muscali?
Nothing.
You're
You
good.
sure?
Good.
Positive.
Mr. Brown?
I didn't write anything down. I'll let somebody else go. and
Okay,
I'll take
Ms.
a
Scott
quick look.
Price?
No, ma'am.
Beach committee.
All right,
We'll do the Blue Star.
go right ahead.
The chair and I attended the Blue Star ceremony at the, I'm having a...
Catherine Lee Bates.
Thank you, and it was very well received. It was a beautiful day, and it's an important mission. It was pretty moving.
The only other thing I'll add is I did go to the
Thank you.
honor court for Harley Smith, and that was really well done. It was Friday night. He became an Eagle Scout. We had already done the proclamation. But, you know, usually Sam had been the one who attended from the board, and that was really well done. It was really fun. So congratulations once again to Harley Smith. Okay, we will move on. Discussion of future agenda items.
Oh, I did have one thing to report, was the Beach Committee's forum at the library was very well attended, and it was very effective. We really, I think, fully reviewed the action items that were in the current 2008 beach management report, and we were all impressed. I think we were all impressed on reflecting on the amount of things that were accomplished in that, and I was a little concerned that we might be saying, wow, we wish we had done more. Of course, there are some things we still need to do, but there is a lot that we checked off, and we went right through all those action items and identified steps going forward that need to be taken, and I thought it was very productive, and I think the beach committee chair was very happy with the results of it, so we'll be reporting back later on the results.
Good to hear. Okay, I have a couple of things for future agenda items. One is, we had a letter, this was back on August 18th, that was in the newspaper, about the Falmouth Housing Authority and the issues with the Falmouth Housing Authority. And I'm wondering if we can have that conversation. I have a few questions, and I'd just like to talk about how that works and the interface between the Falmouth Housing Authority and the town. I have another agenda item. I see that the town of Dennis has moved forward with the child care subsidy initiative, and I'd like to do have a little research on that and see where that may or may not go for us here in Falmouth. Any other discussion of future agenda items?
I'll be coming back later, but I'll give it a little more thought.
Okay.
But I appreciate your Housing Authority agenda item, because I think it would be good if we could identify ways that we could help them be more successful. Of course, we don't have a role in actually participating with them, but
Right.
there must be something we can do to help.
But we don't understand the nature of the problem. And before I'm willing to help, whether it's money or anything else, we need to understand the nature of the problem.
Right.
Because I've done quite a bit of research, and I'm still befuddled.
It's a good word. I like that one.
Yeah, you like that?
Madam Chair, if I may?
I have
Sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Scott
I
Price and
didn't
then
see
Mr.
you, sorry.
Zelinski.
No worries. I've spoken to a few people from the scientific institutions in Woods Hole who would be interested in coming before the board, not for any action item, but just to kind of give a report of the things they're working on as far as with staffing and housing and just the work that they're doing down in Woods Hole, just to give us a report. So no action item from us, but just a heads up that we may get some requests for 5-10 minutes on an agenda.
That would be great. Thank you. Mr. Zelinski.
Mr. Renshaw, now that we have a preliminary opinion from town council on the investigatory duties or parameters, that's going to get put on a future so the whole board can be privy?
I had planned originally having it tonight, but we got that report kind of late. I had requested town council prepare an opinion, a briefing on investigatory powers of select board. Town council did provide that last week. I want to thank her for that, but that'll be on an upcoming meeting agenda.
Do we have that in writing?
I do have a copy in writing.
Could you send that to the board?
I'll distribute to the board.
Because I have not received it. Has anyone else received it?
Not yet.
Okay. I'd like to look at that. I'd like to see what that is.
And Madam Chair, I said it before, I just want to remind everybody, I will not be at the next meeting in September.
We'll make sure not to do anything
gonna
important.
zoom
I was
in?
going to ask
Are you
Steve
going to
Nunn.
zoom in? We'll have no votes. How about that?
I will not zoom in from Europe, no.
Come on. All right, so we will table it.
We're just a phone call away.
Yeah,
We
we'll
want to
keep it that way.
We want to be connected. Okay, it is that time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.